Thank you for listening to Orbit Media on WMCO 90.7 at Muskingum University. I'm J.W. Dennison, the news director for Orbit Media, and today I'm joined by Abe Ovadia. He's a jazz guitarist that Music Vox Guitars has called one of the most innovative guitarists of our time and was awarded the Best Guitarist of 2016 by Hot House Jazz magazine. Muskingum University has invited him to perform at Brown Chapel on Thursday, September 28th to honor Hispanic Heritage Month, and joins me now over the phone. How are you doing, Abe?
Doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming or calling. First question I have is your current tour started July 30th in New Hampshire, and it ends October 27th in New Jersey, and over 3 months you have 28 shows, and is that as exhausting as it sounds?
It is very exhausting. I mean, when it comes to playing music, the performing is the easy part. That to me is not the exhausting part of the work part, but yeah, certainly the traveling is this what it calls for. So for instance, one time when I was starting in Massachusetts at the beginning of the tour, we got on a ferry to go play in Martha's Vineyard and took the ferry back after our 1 hour concert, and then had to head back straight to New York that night. So we really didn't even get to enjoy Martha's Vineyard. I'd never even been there before, but we enjoyed the ferry. But when you dedicate yourself to being a professional musician, that's just the things. It's all about the art, and the performing the music is number one.
All right. I read that you have a preference to performing in trios. Is that how you are going about this current tour? Who's all touring with you?
So I'm heading to Ohio this Thursday. I'm currently calling you from New Jersey. So when I go on the road specifically to the Midwest, I've been performing around the Ohio, Kentucky area for a few years. So whenever I go to the Midwest, I'm always getting together with other musicians who are based in those cities I'm going to be in. So on Thursday night, I'll be with a trio of myself on guitar. On bass, we're going to have a gentleman by the name of Will Strickler joining us. And on the drums will be Anthony Taddeo. And the next day, me and Will will give a master class for the students at Muskingum University who are in the music program. We're really looking forward to that. And then I'll also have a trio on Friday night in Akron, Ohio, with Anthony on drums as well. But Norman Damschroeder will be joining us on bass, and he'll be with us on Saturday night in Toledo as well. So 2 different trios over 3 days, but I think the last time I was in the Ohio area, I had 3 dates just like this, and I had a different trio for every night. So 3 different trios. And that's just, so that was, 1 trio in Cincinnati, 1 trio in Lexington, Kentucky, 1 trio in Toledo. So just back to back playing with different musicians. But that's the fun part about playing jazz, is that you don't meet the people until the gig, and then you have to really be in the moment, and that's the excitement of it.
I saw in a previous interview that you mentioned that you started getting really serious about guitar when you joined the middle school jazz band. And my question for that is, in a landscape where music education often sees the biggest budget cuts, how important is it to you that music programs like that keep being supported?
You know, the music education is such an important part of not just a child's life, but anyone's life. I feel like when one studies music and instrument, that they just become a more well-rounded individual. You access certain parts of the brain that you never did before, because you're doing this thing physically, but also looking at music, and you have to listen to what you're doing. It's almost as if you're speaking with a voice you didn't know you had, as if you had we had access to 2 different voices, our speaking voice and our musical voice. So it's an experience unlike any other one. So if there's no music program in your school, then you should certainly consider getting some private lessons for your child or yourself, because it's just it's something that's incomparable. So we really need to keep the music programs going in our school, and they can be kind of a variety of different programs, not even necessarily just the middle school jazz band like I was in. If kids had an opportunity to take a guitar class or a piano class, that would certainly be fine. It's just really the playing music that's unlike anything else.
Continuing with the theme of education, On your website, it says it's one of your priorities to bring America's original art form to public schools and libraries across the United States, and you're an adjunct professor of guitar at Fairleigh Dickinson University. You kind of touched on it with your previous question, but why is educating one of your priorities in the music industry?
Well, it's very important for me in a jazz context because for a number of reasons. So, jazz music is unlike any other music because it's an improvisational music. We're making it up on the spot, and there's such a unique spontaneity about it that's very different than other genres of music. Spontaneity in a sense that when I'm come to Ohio this week, the first time I play with the musicians will be at the university. We'll be going right from the starting point that night as playing as a unit together. So to me, jazz is something that I'm so passionate about. It's my heart. It's how I express myself. It's how I make a living. It's a therapy. It's so many things. But jazz can be somewhat of a confusing thing to the general public or non-musician. They might see some musicians playing jazz in a restaurant, or they might hear it on the radio, or they might even get tickets to a jazz concert, but they don't necessarily understand what's going on from a musical perspective in the process. So I just feel it's my responsibility to share that. And when I educate those in library programs or assemblies for children, I'm kind of giving them that exposure to the quality of improvisation, making it up the music on the spot. And when they learn that and see how it's done, because we try to explain it for everybody. So if I do a program for kids, it's going to be a little bit different than doing it for adults. I might start with a song that the kids know, whether it's, Happy Birthday or the Star Spangled Banner, then turn that into a jazzy version. But, there is that, mystery behind it that I think needs to be explained to people. And if they just had a little bit more of an understanding, then they could widen their musical palette of taste, and then jazz would be for everybody. I would love it if it were more mainstream and not such a niche genre. So my responsibility is to just play this music as much as possible for as many people as possible in restaurants, in jazz clubs, at universities, everywhere I can, because this is just what I feel like this is my responsibility as a person, just to share jazz with the world in my art. So hopefully that explains it.
So part of spreading education and awareness of jazz and things like that, you're obviously coming to, from New Jersey in the New York area, a very big population, and you're coming to the village of New Concord, which only has about 2,500 people per our last census. So, how many small communities like this have you performed in before, and how do small communities like this differ from the bigger cities?
I've been in plenty of places that I discovered them as I'm going to the gig, and or people contact me. I've been to so many towns that I have never heard of, but audiences are always the same, and in some of those places, those are some of the best audiences because the closest concert venue for them to go to is quite a drive away or hours away. So those are some of the most appreciative audiences. But personally for me, I always feel it is exciting when there's a really great listening audience who claps after solos. And those are some of the types you see when, you're in places like that. But to me personally, I'm just always focused on the music and making it as good as possible, whether it's a packed venue or theater, or if I'm playing at a small restaurant and there's only a handful of tables there on a rainy night. So I'm just trying to do the best I can do for the music.
Absolutely. Since your upcoming performance is on a university campus and you perform at several university campuses, I wanted to ask how performing at these venues, if you feel any connection to your experiences at Berklee College of Music and New York University when you play in these kinds of venues.
Do I feel a connection to the higher education? That's the question you're asking?
Yeah, your experience within those universities performing and attending school there.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly brings back memories when I'm in universities, and even actually right now I'm calling you from Fairleigh Dickinson University, and so I'm on a college campus every week teaching guitar. So it definitely brings me back to those days where I was, in school and just trying to, to learn this music and struggling to play with people and just and take class. It brings me back to those days and just remembering that. So if there's ever like a bad day where I really don't feel like going to play right now, I might go back to those moments and remember you were on this journey at one point in a university. So get excited about it. And then when you go to play, this is where I'm supposed to be right now.
As I alluded to earlier, kind of at the intro of this discussion, your performance at Brown Chapel is part of Muskingum University's event lineup celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. Do you utilize your tour also to educate about Hispanic Heritage Month while you're on tour during this time?
Well, that just happens to be a very, special coincidence. But I have done things in the past, actually. So one time I was an artist in residence at a elementary, not one elementary school, about 3 elementary schools for Black History Month. And I was meeting with every single class, talking with them about jazz and the Harlem Renaissance. So that things like that have lined up before, certainly. So this will just be extra special too.
Going through your interviews, I saw one fun fact that I saw that mentioned on the Jazz Musician's Voice interview, your father introduced you to Israeli music. For those unfamiliar, what's that kind of sound like, and has that introduction to that genre influenced your style or taste in any way?
Yeah, certainly. So I grew up watching this one movie with my family. It's almost like what would be considered the Grease of Israel. It's called The Troop, actually, and that was just the one music I just got so into when I was growing up, and definitely entered my psyche because a lot of those songs were using certain scales that I actually end up using today. Also, there's similarities between certain things that those Israeli scales use that a jazz musician like John Coltrane would use, and just the overall harmonic structure is the same. But I think everything we take in that we enjoy musically goes into our psyche, and it ends up coming out at some point. So, I mean, for me, that was one of the first styles. But I also love, when I grew up in the 90s, loved 90s dance music, and bands like Ace of Base or people like Real McCoy or Robin S. Like, I grew up listening to that. So it all goes into our psyche, and that just ends up somehow translating into the music we end up playing, even if it's in the most indirect way. You're influenced by it.
Absolutely. You mentioned earlier that you wish jazz would be more mainstream, and I was kind of wondering what your opinion was on why that might be the case, that it's not as mainstream as you'd like it to be.
Why is it? Why do I think jazz is not as mainstream as it should be? There's a number of reasons. I think there's maybe certain people weren't exposed to jazz growing up in elementary school. Maybe they were in the band or something, but they just grew up, having to play whatever the teacher put in front of them. So that's why I like to educate in those ways. So maybe they just didn't get that exposure growing up. Maybe they went to a jazz concert and the musicians didn't really connect with the audience. Maybe they felt kind of excluded, and that the musicians didn't, that they were just amongst themselves and didn't try to reach the audience on a personal level. There's also just what music has become, in a sense, with a lot of electronic music, and not to say any of it that it's bad, just the way music has evolved in a sense. There's so many reasons. But I mean, that's one of the reasons I like to go play in restaurants, and just be able to expose the average person who's just going out to dinner and have a night out, just to get them a chance to hear John Coltrane. So I think that's also part of it too. A lot of restaurants or certain venues that have food with their music are sort of locked in to this cover band mentality, and don't give the jazz musicians a chance to really do their thing. And it's, there are certain jazz musicians who might play quote unquote, very traditional, but they can also be super exciting and just as high energy as listening to Bruce Springsteen or something. Jazz can have as much energy, if not more, as Metallica, So people get locked, certain places get locked into this cover band thing, and that's just it. They have their rotation of certain bands, and that's just it. So, if someone's open-minded and enough to have me play, I'm very happy about that. Even if they never had jazz before, if they take a chance. So yeah, I think those might be some of the reasons.
In an interview you did with the Jazz Musician's Voice, you told a story about how, as you were passing, or maybe you were on your way to Toys R Us, you passed a store with a guitar on it, and your dad told you that if you got the guitar, you couldn't go to Toys R Us ever again. And you seemed to accept that deal. Did he think, was he surprised looking back that decision you made not only seemed to really stick with you, but that it's become all it is with you today?
I think he was very, very surprised. I think in the beginning it was just more of a hobby. I didn't really want to practice or anything, but I mean, the guitar was always there, and in the beginning it was something I would play with like a toy. I mean, I knew how to play certain songs and, like the Addams Family theme, but for me, for that one decision to change my life in such a profound way, I don't think he thought that whatsoever. But I do give credit to, my mother and father who allowed me to go pursue music as a career. When you're in high school, you do need that support. And my parents were the most supportive. They said, whatever you want to do, just, it's okay with us. And I was serious about music, and I always knew I wanted to pursue it as a career, but how do you go about it? And my generation, after high school, you go to college, and if you don't go to college, you go to community college, then you go to a 4-year university. So they were very, very supportive in that. And if I want to continue, you want to go to grad school, please do. So I give them a lot of credit for allowing me to do this when I was younger. And because, there's certain people who would love to go to music college, but, people don't think you can make a living in the music business. And, it's very, very hard to make a living in the music business. It's very hard. You have to really push and, make certain sacrifices. So, for instance, like the last 2.5 years, I had a residency at a restaurant in New York City, Joanne Trattoria. It's actually the restaurant owned by Lady Gaga's family. I was there pretty much every Sunday the last 2.5 years because I was playing solo guitar there. But I actually recently just decided, okay, you know what? I need to enjoy my Sundays now. It's a very important part of the day with my other performances and just for my, having more balance. But it's those types of things you have to sacrifice, giving up your Sundays. But if you love what you do and you want to do this, you have to do it.
Makes sense. Alrighty. That's all the questions I have. Where can people find you if they're interested in learning more about you?
So if you visit my website, abeovadia.com, you'll find where I'll be performing. All the dates are updated pretty much month to month. And facebook.com/Abe Ovadia is my Facebook page. Instagram, you can find me at Abe Ovadia Music as well. And for for emailing about setting up a concert or anything like that, blessings, booking abeovadia@gmail.com.
All right. Thanks again to Abe Ovadia for joining me tonight. You can find him September 28th in Brown Chapel at 7 o'clock and the other stops on his website that he mentioned. This has been J.W. Dennison for Orbit Media on WMCO 90.7. This interview will also be available on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/907news. Thanks for listening.